Welcome back, everybody, to Dirty Boots Capital. I'm your host, Tony Lopes, and today we have some pretty amazing and young guests with us. They created a company called Gateway Investor, doing some international investments. Their names are Krista Fettke and Alec Denney. Thank you both for being on Dirty Boots Capital.
Thank
Yeah,
you so much
super
for having
excited.
us, Tony.
Yeah, no, this is gonna be fun. So we were chatting a little bit before I hit the record button how I know somewhat of Krista's mom, Kathy Fettke, and my followers primarily a lot about real estate, so they probably know your mom. And so share a little bit about Krista from your background, like how you got introduced to real estate investing and how that propagated into international waters. And then also, Alec, I want to hear a little bit about your story as well, because you come from a totally different perspective with like parents that did no real estate investing. And I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm just saying very different perspective than Krista has. So Krista,
Yeah,
why don't you get started?
yeah, that's a great question. So, my parents have owned their real estate investment company, Real Wealth, for over 20 years now. So, I have grown up around real estate investing pretty much as long as I can remember. I've been to every conference, I have been around some pretty big players, and I just had no interest.
Mm.
Since I was a little girl, I was like, this is boring. I don't get it. It seems stressful. But the one thing I always knew that I wanted to do was travel. So after I graduated college, I spent 2 years traveling all around Europe and Asia.
Mm.
And my mom has a really tactical way of getting what she wants, I guess. So she always wanted me to be in real estate investing. And then she saw this love of traveling. So one of her colleagues came to her and told her about this opportunity where you could buy real estate in Portugal and then get citizenship with it. She set up all these meetings, her and her colleague, and we were already in Europe at the time. And so we kind of just decided to tag along to some of these meetings. And I think my mom secretly was like hoping that we would be interested in it. And we're sitting in on these meetings and we're hearing how affordable these properties are, all the benefits of citizenship. This is what we started with, the golden visa, and the low interest rates, like all of these perks. And our minds were just completely blown after seeing how amazing Portugal and Spain and these properties were and how affordable. So that's kind of how we bridge the connection.
Yeah, that's awesome because, like your parents, Krista, right, that have spent a good amount of time in real estate, they see the huge benefits. Not only do they see the benefits, they spent a lot of time building their real estate wealth in the United States. But when you go to these other countries and you come with that perspective for real estate and for living a good life, and you come to these other countries like Portugal, you mentioned. I've been to Portugal a few times because I'm looking to invest there myself. And so I'm looking at these different perspectives. And for an American going to Portugal, you automatically like 2x your dollar over there because everything is so much cheaper. A couple like yourselves, you can go out, have a plated lunch with a glass of wine for like 15 euros, which is basically $15. That's insane. You could never eat like that. A plated lunch, very nice fish, meat, whatever it is, with a glass of wine, two people for $15 in Portugal. You can never have that here. So you start to gain that perspective. And the same thing with housing. To be able to buy something oceanfront for under $1 million, which you can do out there, it's insane. You have these beautiful views, these beautiful beaches, and to have that here, you're paying multi-million dollars for that.
Yeah,
So that's huge.
I like to
Yeah,
say this
go
all
ahead.
the time, but I mean, if you were to pick up all of our markets that we work with, both in Portugal and Spain, and cross out the names, sharpie out the names, and say that they were in the US, they'd be the hottest markets on earth. But the big challenge for us is speaking with American investors who tend to have that America-centric mindset and saying, hey, look, there's markets outside of the US. You can rely on different economies, and there's also other benefits I'm sure we're going to get into later in this conversation. But it's just about sort of blindfolding that old perspective that American real estate market is it, and introducing other markets. And typically when they sit down, have a conversation, learn a little bit more, and broaden their horizons a bit, their hesitations are appeased a bit.
Yeah, so Alec, give us a perspective of your background, your upbringing, how you got into this international investing.
Yeah, so definitely not as cool as Chris does. My parents were traveling around the globe doing conferences and writing books and that good stuff. But as I mentioned this to you earlier, they were W-2 workers. So the only houses that they had was their primary. They had a cabin that I grew up with, but didn't even use it as an investment, or I just would go there every other month and just let it sit dormant for the rest of the year. So didn't really have that savvy real estate knowledge. And I started to pick everything up, pieced everything together when I met the Fetkes, and sat down for a lot of conversations with them, and they've sort of changed my mindset. And like Krista, I love to travel. She introduced it to me. We met later in college. So we got to travel the world quite a bit. And when she said that there was an opportunity for possibly us joining a team in Europe and doing international real estate, I chugged along. It's not like,
Yeah. Well, you're super smart to latch on to that because yeah, it's such an opportunity. So help me understand, like in terms of like gateway investor, like what do you guys help people do? Like, is it through education? Do you help them find deals? Do you help them partner with others? Like, what's it all about?
Honestly, all of the above. So we were so struck by this information that we gathered in these meetings, and we just couldn't believe that people weren't talking about this in America. I heard everyone talking about where can I find great deals? Even ourselves, we were looking to invest soon, and we were like, property prices are just through the roof. Interest rates are so high. We kind of just feel
Yes.
like we've missed the time to really make money in real estate. And so sitting in on this meeting and realizing that there are markets out there with affordable prices, low interest rates, and all these other benefits, and these beautiful like vacation home, dream home
Mm,
places, we just didn't understand why people weren't talking about this. So our number one thing is just to get the message out. We just want
mm,
people to know that there are opportunities out there. You just have to look a little bit beyond your horizons.
yeah.
And then we also just want to make the process as simple as possible for investors, because we do know that it can be a little daunting. And I think that's why a lot of people don't do it. They understand the local real estate laws really well. They understand how the process works in the United States. So kind of branching beyond that seems really scary. So our role is kind of just holding our investors' hands every step of the way. We connect with reputable legal firms in each of the countries we work with, developers, we can find the projects for you. We can connect with lenders, kind of just streamlining the whole entire process to make it as simple as possible and as trustworthy as possible.
Yeah, that's amazing. So can you walk us through, like, say somebody wants to buy a vacation home slash Airbnb type property? I mean, I think that's a pretty common one. I think for my listeners who are looking to invest in real estate, yet also have a means to have a better return on life, as I say, have a better life for themselves, travel internationally like you guys are doing, to be able to land in a place like Portugal that has multiple airports, major airports where you can fly to any other city in Europe is huge to be able to travel internationally. How would somebody go about doing that? Like, how much do they need down for a down payment? What is the interest rate out there? What's the term for the interest rate? Like, what's the whole legal piece of that? Like, when you go to rent it, can you walk me through a little bit of that?
Yeah, loaded question. How much time do we have?
Yeah, I know there's a lot there. If you can kind of condense it down, just to kind of paint the picture for the listeners.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, first thing I want to make clear is so we were doing the golden visa. I don't know if we were able to make this transition to what we do now, but we were doing the golden visa, and then Portugal terminated that program around a year ago. So we decided to pivot into the residential space, and that's what we work with now. So our role is to connect investors with reputable developers, typically pre-construction projects for investment purposes. So majority of them are vacation rentals. And like Krista said, walking them throughout the entire process, introducing them to legal firms, property managers, making sure everything's set up. Because for property teams out there, it's sort of hard for them to tap into the American market. So they utilize teams like ours with large databases. So we can go in and vet these property teams, say, okay, you're what we're looking for. We'll add you to our inventory and then introduce that project to our investors. So that's our role now since leaving the golden visa. The first step that I would recommend, one, is speaking to a team. Doesn't have to be gateway investors, but a team like ours that has, been doing this for quite some time now and understand the ins and outs. We can definitely answer those macro questions, but those micro questions regarding the process, we're probably going to want to defer you to a legal firm. And that would probably be the second best step, is to ask all those big questions. What does visa restrictions look like? What's the residency laws? All that good stuff. Lawyers are going to be able to answer that. What is the step-by-step process in the purchase? What contracts, what paperwork needs to be presented? All that good stuff. So that'd probably be the second best bet. And then obviously, I say this all the time, you're going to want to go to the market that you're interested in. You can only learn so much online. You can only learn so much through renderings. We've highly recommend our clients to get over there, whether it's Malaga or it's Porto. You want to go check out that market to make sure it's a good fit, because things may look good on paper, but you go over there and you think, it's just not really what we thought it was. Something doesn't feel, let's go back to the drawing board and we can find a different market. So you're definitely going to want to do that. But with regards to loan terms and interest rates, as of today, I can take a step back. So Europe works off of the Eurobar, like the SOFR. It's essentially SOFR, right? So now, as of today, it's 3.2%. Now, banks are going to add a tacked on commission, right? Because they need opportunity to make their money. So if you're going to get out a mortgage in, say, Portugal, you're probably looking at around 3.7, 3.8%. It's 30% down. So that's sort of the only major difference. 30% down, 70% out can be lended, and 15, 20, 25 year fixed rate, variable. It's sort of the same deal. So that's, I think, the biggest surprise that most people have is they think they're going to go into something completely different, and they sit back and they realize like, oh, all this is very familiar, and it makes them feel a bit more comfortable.
So even for an international investor, like I don't have a dual citizenship or anything like that. So as an American investor, I would get 3 point something interest rate.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that's different about being a non-national investor is you're going to have to abide by the visa restrictions. So that's a Schengen area visa restriction. That's 90 days on, 90 days off. So you can't purchase this property to go live there. You'd have to get citizenship or residency. There's other avenues you can take to get that, the D7, the golden visa, whatever. But you're going to have to abide by that. But like I said, the majority of our inventory is for vacation rentals and for investors looking to make a quick buck. So that's sort of our product. You're not gonna have to worry about residency.
What does the short-term rental market look like in Portugal? I know there's a lot of change going on now with the different political regimes, but what's that looking like in terms of, like, say I purchased a property, nice waterfront, maybe it's in a community with a pool and amenities. Can I just willy-nilly like have that on the short-term rental market and have somebody manage that for me?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people who are familiar with Portugal have heard, and not just Portugal, Spain as well. There's some issues in Barcelona that some poor tourists are having to deal with some water guns. Not sure if anyone's heard of that. But I mean, the local population is getting a bit upset because prices have increased. I think Americans can relate. Us Californians might be able to relate a bit, not to that extent, but so they're getting a little bit frustrated, and they're obviously going to the local government saying, hey, look, this has become affordable. You're pushing us out away from the water into central Portugal, which is still an amazing area, but everyone wants to be next to the beach, especially in Portugal. So there are rules and restrictions against non-nationals coming in and purchasing on and off market deals, but our product are pre-construction. So Portuguese companies or their English companies that have the correct permit and paperwork that states that they can build there and they can be used as short-term, mid-term, or long-term rentals. So,
okay, so that sounds like that's kind of a strategy there is if you wanted to do a short-term rental, you would go ahead and purchase one of these pre-constructions that already have the licensing in place, and that would transfer to the buyer.
Yeah, because if not, then you're going to have to be going through a buttload of paperwork.
Yeah.
And what's the likelihood you'll even get it? So you're going to want to go to a pre-construction project if you want to short-term rent it.
Yeah. So, Krista, tell us a little bit about just like the infrastructure. Like some people still have the perception like Portugal is like old world Europe. The roads are still cobblestone and the infrastructure just really isn't there. Tell us what the highway system is. Tell us a little bit about if you experience the hospitals or the universities or just the city centers where there's arts and entertainment and restaurants. Tell us what all that's like.
That's so funny you say that because I have heard this concern quite a bit, especially about Portugal. And we spent like 2 months living there, and everything was so well established. We had a little Vespa that we took everywhere. All the roads were perfectly paved. The transportation is great. It's really connected. All the major cities have train stations, metros, everything you need. And yes, most of the cities still have cobblestone roads, but that's one of my favorite parts about the country.
It's part of the charm.
Yeah, it's part of the charm. It's quaint, it's adorable, and it's so European. And then in terms of healthcare and I mean, groceries, we spent 2 months living there. So we never ran into any language barriers. That was one thing that we noticed. Pretty much everyone speaks pretty perfect English there that we ran into. And then in terms of healthcare, they actually have the 12th best healthcare system in the world. So they're really well established there. And everything else we ran into just was perfect. And
and with some metrics, GDP's up, I think 1.2%, inflation's going down. So, I mean, the country as a whole is doing very, very well, and it's bouncing back from COVID. And yeah, I mean, piggybacking off of what she said, Portugal is one of the first places that we went and really stayed in an area, and we were a little bit apprehensive. And we went to one of the more, I can't say remote because it's a huge vacation area, but the Algarve, which is obviously lesser of a place than Lisbon and Porto, just with regards to population. And like she said, everyone spoke English. Everything was very similar to what you could expect here in the States. And we didn't want to leave. I was talking about that visa restriction, and we were going to risk it all and just say, screw it. Let's see how long they can, it'll take for them to find us.
And you're mentioning these different areas. So we're talking specifically Portugal, but I'm sure Spain has the same sort of environment. So for the listeners, like Alec and Chris had mentioned, if you're interested in investing in Portugal specifically, I think it's a great thing. I'm looking at it, and it's important to get out there and experience it because Porto has a different feel than Lisbon, has a different feel than the Algarve, has a different feel than inland versus by the ocean. The Algarve, for me, when I spent better than a week there, it was very much overcome by folks from the UK,
Yeah.
which was okay. I mean, it was fine. I was there for a week. I did some golfing along the ocean at Val de Lobo. Beautiful golf course, beautiful place, amazing. But it had a very English feel to it. And so it was actually difficult in the Algarve for me to find an authentic Portuguese restaurant. Like, I'm Portuguese. I'm 100% Portuguese.
Well,
So for me, I'm like looking for like the authentic meal. In the Algarve, just didn't hit the mark there. Beautiful beaches. I think TripAdvisor rated one of their beaches like the most beautiful beach in the world was
Yeah.
at the Algarve. We went to it and it was absolutely beautiful. Stunning colors, stunning cliffs, beautiful. But it's just a different feel. Like, if you're looking for more of an authentic Portuguese city, I think Lisbon, it definitely hits the mark. But again, that's going to be a very different experience than if you're inland, away from the coast, and you're more in the agriculture district of things. That's going to be a very different environment. You may find a cheaper place to buy inland, but it's going to be a different environment. So it's super important, like you had said, super important to go out there and spend some time getting to just know the surroundings. But yeah, I love it out there. I love it out there. So you mentioned the golden visa. For folks that don't know, like, what is the golden visa and what's the opportunity today? Because it has changed. Krista, if you want to talk a little bit about that, or Alec, whoever's the most fluent.
Do you want to do it?
I'll start. You can.
Okay.
So we started with the Portugal Golden Visa, and originally all you had to do was purchase a property for 280,000 euros, hold it for 6 years, and then make returns every year like a normal investment property. On the 6th year, you sell it, get all your money back, if not more, and then you get European citizenship with that. So that was obviously a really great deal. Pretty much after we launched, they shut that part of it down. It is still available, or it was still available after that, to just invest in the arts or the sciences or start a business there and hire 10 employees. But with each of those methods, you are just basically making a donation and not getting your money back. So you're buying citizenship, but at a pretty heavy cost. Until recently, and Alec can touch on this now.
This is where I come. This is where you came in. Yeah. So exactly what you said. You're buying an asset. You're not giving up money for in return of an item. You're buying an asset and using it as a vehicle to get that item and reselling that vehicle. Obviously, we think the real estate method is the best. Now, if you were to talk to us a year and a half ago, we would say, okay, well, the opportunity is you purchase a property for 280,000, has to be cash, hold it for 5 years, get a 5% return. And then when you divest on year 6, you got to buy back, get your money back, you get citizenship. Exactly what Krista said. Now they terminated that program, but these larger corporations that we work with have been able to lobby with the government to say, hey, look, the golden visa is still a very beneficial thing, not only for the government, not only for Portugal bringing in outside cash, but also for people looking to set up shop, expats looking to stay in Portugal. So they're able to lobby in a new type of golden visa called the hospitality fund. And what that is sort of the same parameters. Instead of 280,000, it's now 500,000. So a bit more pricey. Same deal. That 500,000, instead of going into a unit, goes into a hospitality fund where it trickles down and supports 3 different construction projects for that certain company. And you hold that for 5 or 6 years. And then when you decide to take your money back or divest from that fund, you get that citizenship. So the beautiful thing about the golden visa, it's a way to buy into citizenship if you are looking to jump ship or want to renounce or just set up shop somewhere else and stay there for the long term. But the barrier is quite high. You're going to need that 500,000. So I think it's a no-brainer. You're putting cash into a fund that you're going to get that cash back later after 6 years, but not many people have $500,000 to put somewhere for 6 years. Yeah. So it's for a specific type of person. But if you have that money, if we had that money, we would do that in a heartbeat. There's nothing better than having dual citizenship, especially in Europe.
Yeah, because you're basically using Portugal as the gateway for the rest of Europe.
Yep.
Right?
That's where our name came from.
You figured us out. Yeah.
Exactly. That's the beauty of it, because there's so much to explore out there. And I think as people get older, it's not about creating maybe more wealth or more money. It's about creating a better return on life. They want to have more experiences. They want to go out to eat and have a great meal and have great wine. And when you can do that in Portugal on 40 cents on the dollar, as opposed to here in the States, that's pretty attractive. So even though buying into a fund may be $500,000, you're getting a lot of upside on the other end of that when you're actually there in country.
Absolutely. And I mean, you're getting upside not just for yourself, but for your family as well. You're allowed to bring in your kids as long as they're under the age of 23 and financially dependent on you. You can also bring in your parents as long as you can prove that they're financially dependent on you. So you can move the whole family over, right? It's not just you. It's a family as in one application. Granted, each application costs a certain amount of dollars. So the more people you add, the more expensive. But if you have some people that are financially dependent, and you have that money that you're sitting on, it's a fantastic option.
And it's not just the lifestyle benefits, it comes with free healthcare, all the benefits you get as a European citizen, because Portuguese
Benefits of socialism.
yeah, but it's not just Portuguese citizenship, it's European citizenship.
Yeah.
So you get visa-free access to all of these different countries. You can live and work anywhere in Europe, free healthcare for your whole family, free education for your children. There's a whole list of perks that come with it.
So there's a lot of things to balance as we're talking back and forth here. One of the other things I look at balancing is, depending on how much time I do spend out there, will be double taxation, because the United States is going to tax me on not only my income in the US, but if I make income in Portugal as a result of short-term rentals or some investment out there, the US is also going to tax me on my Portuguese income. That's where I think, Alec, you had mentioned you guys put people in touch with the legal representatives to be able to work through all this, because my situation is going to be different than somebody else's, will be different than yours. And you really have to understand the nuances and the ramifications of how much time you actually spend out there.
Yeah, I mean, the way that I understand it, and I am in no way a tax attorney or have
we have to put that
experience in
disclaimer
tax.
at the bottom.
Yeah, make 3 pages, because I
am not a CPA.
I'm nothing in that regard. But the way that I understand is there are double taxation laws between the US and Portugal. So Portugal is obviously going to have much lower taxes than America, along with every other country probably. The way that I understand it is you're going to have to pay Portugal whatever their taxes are. That goes to the government, and then whatever the US taxes, say Portugal's 20, US taxes 25%. What's off the top of that 20, that 5% goes to the US. Does that make sense? So 20% goes to Portugal, then that added 5% because America's 25, that goes to America. So you're not going to get double tax. So if America's 25 and Portugal's 20, you're not going to be paying 45% in taxes. That's the process. Again, check my work. I don't know what I'm talking about.
And it's ever changing. And it's ever changing. I mean, there's different political regimes coming into power, and sometimes it's in favor of the Portuguese citizen that is historically been there, and they want to keep things in favor of them to buy houses and have free healthcare, and it's going to lean more that way. Other times, Portugal is going to lean in the direction of their number one export, which is tourism, followed by number two, which is agriculture. So tourism, to the work that you guys are doing, I mean, you guys are in a safe spot because their number one is tourism. There's always going to be people coming and going and buying and trading up.
100%. And just to go back on the Golden Visa really quick, I mean, we were grateful enough to help a handful of applicants go through the process. And me being in sales, I guided everyone through the process. And what I came to realize is, as amazing as Portugal is, and don't get us wrong, we've sat here for now 30 minutes talking about how amazing Portugal is. What a lot of people that we assisted with the Golden Visa, they didn't care about Portugal. They were just trying to get that EU passport. And that's what a lot of people fail to realize, is you're not getting Portuguese citizenship and just getting a Portuguese passport. Now, Portugal is a part of the EU, so you're getting an EU passport. So that gives you freedom to be a Portuguese citizen and then claim residency in, say, Switzerland, which has very strict immigration laws, or Sweden, or anywhere else throughout the EU. You're not going to get kicked out of there because you have that passport. So that's another avenue that someone can take, because Portugal does tend to have the lowest buy-in for the Golden Visa. So people use that as a vehicle to get elsewhere.
Use Portugal as the gateway to get your European passport. I'm curious from your perspective what you've encountered, because what I've encountered is, so there's a lot of greatness here. We like to talk about that, but Portugal is still very, in some regards, their institutions, their banking institution and their bureaucracy of things, very antiquated based on my experience. So based on that, if it was me, I would advise people to seek the help of somebody else who's in country, who's very familiar with the laws and how to do things. What has your experience been? Do you think somebody can do this on their own if they wanted to purchase something overseas? Or, and I don't want you to be biased. I mean, look, please use unfiltered glasses. And I'm being truly serious about this, because I'm working on my passport via descent, and that should be real easy for them to do. They're like, hey, you have Portuguese parents. Yeah, we see their documentation. We see their citizenship. Oh, boom. It's going on this many years for me to get my Portuguese citizenship via descent. they're just a little bit backwards in some ways. Now, if I had somebody in country that was pushing that for me, that was walking it from northern Portugal to Lisbon, to have the Pope sign it for me, to have it brought back to, maybe it'd be quicker, but in country it's almost like you got to be there to kick this stuff. Otherwise it gets stuck under a pile of papers. What are your thoughts on that?
We have a lot of experience with this, again, because we worked with the Golden Visa, and it's called the SCF. That's Portugal's Immigration Office. I'm sure you've had some discussions with them. They're very much backlogged, and that's because of this Golden Visa thing. So for the applicants, back when we were doing the Golden Visa primarily as our product, you would submit the application and you wouldn't get the paperwork back in order to start until 12, 18 months. So it's very much backlogged. And I'm sure they're prioritizing the Golden Visa people rather than descendant people, because they're actually getting something from the Golden Visa people. Yeah. That's just government, that's just business. So yeah, it's backlogged. I've heard they've now made strides in order to get the application process to go quicker. I know now they created this relatively recently, that by the time you send in the application, then your 6 years starts. So it's not, you have to wait that 12, 18 months for it to get recycled through everybody and paper signed and then sent your way. No, once you send in the application, you purchase the project or unit, you show that you've purchased it, then the clock starts ticking. So they've taken steps to ensure that they're not too backlogged and that people aren't waiting decades in order to get this citizenship. But yeah, it's government. Things take way too long.
Yeah, it's just different. It's different. Krista, is that been your experience?
Yeah, I'll just add on to that as well. We personally recommend getting legal representation in the country, just because they're going to know the laws the best. They're going to have the connections. I mean, you can only know so much as an American firm working in Portugal, but we have experienced, I will say, a different kind of work ethic. We'll reach out to people and it'll feel like 2 weeks we're waiting for them to get back, and they're like, oh, sorry, we're on holiday. Yeah. And again, a couple weeks later, oh, again, we're on holiday. Yeah. Yeah. So we're like, we need to kind of get this moving along. And they're like, you Americans, and you're just work mode. So there's definitely kind of a cultural difference there. I'm super jealous of the way they live.
Yeah, I think we're the wrong ones. Like, to us, we see that, we're like, God, get to work. They're like, why do you guys work so much? So it's about perspective.
And it's just a matter of, like, again, helping the listeners calibrate to a different environment. They're not the US. It's almost like when you go to New England. I'm a New Englander. I was born and raised in New England, and then I go to the South, and it's like so slow. I'm like driving on the road and I'm like, let's go. Yeah. Like, I'm just like red face, ready to hit the gas. And it's just a very different feel and speed down in the South versus in New England. But I want to give a little bit of time to some projects you guys are working on. Tell us about, is it Tulum and also the Grand La Cala?
Yeah, the Lakai was a project that we just added, and it's one of the ones we're the most excited about. We were there a little earlier this year in May, and it is such a beautiful project. It's coming along really nicely.
Is it in Portugal?
This one is in Spain, in the Costa del Sol. Okay. So just like you said, Portugal has kind of the different areas and they all have their different feels. I think everyone knows Madrid, everyone knows Barcelona, but a lot of Americans tend to overlook southern Spain, which we actually think is maybe the most beautiful part, but it's not overlooked by Northern Europeaners. So Northern Europeaners go there year round. There's 325 days of sunshine. So constant tourism. And it is just so beautiful. It feels like you're in Santa Barbara or Malibu or something like that. And this project specifically is like 2 minutes away from the beach in the hills above Mijas. And you can get into it a little
bit. Well, I mean, I'm the sales guy, so I know all the numbers and all the good stuff on the projects. But yeah, so it's a Wyndham branded construction project. So we work with both developers and we work with hotel chains. And sometimes what hotels will do is they'll have this huge resort and they want to free up some capital. So they'll release a cluster, say 20, 30 units to put on the open market because they want to free up some capital, because one, the sale will give them capital, and two, they know that investors will probably use them as management, which in turn will give them capital as well. So we think it's a really strong investment to use hotels. It's not a timeshare. Again, it's not a timeshare.
Yeah, I was just going to ask.
Yeah, no, not a timeshare. It's a freehold. It's your unit. You can sell it whenever you wish.
You hold the deed to it.
You hold the deed to it. It is your property. That scares a lot of people off when I mention hotel chain. But Wyndham also builds new projects that are branded by Wyndham or Wyndham Grand or Ramada, who's owned by Wyndham, and then sell them as well. So we tend to hop on those quite quick because it brings prestige, experience. The project's not going to flop. There's a lot of capital behind each of them, and they're beautiful projects. So yeah, we'll link if you can on the podcast some information regarding that project. It's in Costa del Sol, and like Krista said, we talked a lot about Portugal, but we're really, really excited about Costa del Sol, Spain. occupancy throughout the year, 325 days of sunshine. It's quite consistent in occupancy. High occupancy comes high returns. So
I researched a little bit of that area, and it's almost like that is the Algarve like 10 years ago. Would you
Totally.
agree?
That's
100%.
exactly how we would
Yeah,
describe it.
I mean, so
Yeah.
Grand, La Calle, which you guys are going to see, that's our most expensive project by far. It's 600,000. Typically, we work with conventional investors, so
Yeah.
typically we're offering stuff from 250 to say 450, 500. This is top tier for us, and you're going to see these units and be like, "There's no way this is 600,000." The buy-in price is very, very still small compared to what you're going to see. Even in Portugal, we had this discussion before we hopped on. Portugal was at one point a really best kept secret. And it still is. I mean, compared to the States, it's a no-brainer. But 10 years ago, you can get the same property nowadays. That's 450 for 150. So we're constantly trying to move around and scope out new markets that are still what we think behind with regards to price that we know are going to appreciate 5x, 10x, whatever in the coming decades. So we're really excited about Costa del Sol.
And what about Tulum?
We were heavily leaning into Tulum for a while because the property prices are the lowest of any of our markets. Properties typically range from 180,000 to like 250,000 and not much above that. The only issue with Tulum is that financing is difficult, if not just not a smart choice.
Sure.
Yeah, it's
But at
11.
those affordable prices, it's almost like you can go in and just buy without financing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And that's what the majority of people who buy in Mexico do. Interest rates,
Yeah.
if you're a foreigner, like 11, 12%, underwrite that,
Yeah.
you're not, it's pointless. So a lot of people buy out in cash, and it's still an amazing market. We still offer a lot of inventory there. We're actually doing a property tour. We're going to BPCon and Cancun here in the coming months. So anyone else who's going, come find us. But we're going to be there, and we're going to go a few days early to do a tour in Tulum, because Tulum's the one place where we really want people to go and check out, because we've noticed now doing this for over a year, people have these preconceived notions of Mexico. And once you step foot in Tulum and realize, okay, this is a huge high touristic destination, all those articles that you read on the news, probably overflated. So we really want to get people over there to see it for what it truly is. We've done a few property tours there already. We've had quite a bit of success. So yeah, so we have a property tour coming up. We don't have the date solidified just yet, probably by the end of this week. But we'd love for people to come and check it out with us.
Yeah, that's wild. I so appreciate you guys. You guys bringing a different perspective to real estate investing, and being so young, it's just proof that really anybody can do this. You know, with right guidance, with education, with the connections, a good network, anybody can do this. It's really not that hard. So for folks that want to learn more about your company and about what you guys do, where's the best place for them to reach out?
So our website is www.gatewayinvestors.com. We have all our information on there. You can schedule a call with Alec. He is the investment counselor and he's great at it. Yeah, and his Calendly will be linked. You can reach out to us, info@gatewayinvestors.com. And yeah.
Yeah, and find us on social media.
Social
same
media,
names.
yeah.
That's excellent.
And
Yeah.
me and her are very different. She likes to send emails, and she likes to, take the long way of learning more about information, doing her own independent research. I like just picking up a phone and calling someone and say, "Hey, what's the deal with this?" We very much welcome that. That is the majority of our calls, or people are like, "Is it true? You can get this and there." So if you have any questions at all, anything that we mentioned that you want some more clarity on, please feel free to hop on our website. You'll find my phone number there. Give me a call. I can sit down with you for 30 plus minutes and we can go over stuff in more detail. I'm happy to do it.
You're awesome. Alec, Krista, pleasure having you on Dirty Boots Capital. Hopefully I can get to meet you out there at BPCon. That's the Bigger Pockets conference that's happening. For folks that aren't familiar with BPCon, it's the Bigger Pockets conference. So look that up. Meet these beautiful folks out there at that conference. Talk to them about international investing. It really is a whole different perspective on things. And sometimes you can't get into the US market because it's so damn expensive. The international market may be the answer for you. So check them out, and definitely go to their website, check out more of what they offer for education and services, and go from there. Alec, Krista, thanks for being on.
Thank you so much for
Tony.
having us,
Really
Tony.
appreciate it.